Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel where I analyze all of the 20 CSEC poems on a weekly basis. This week I employed a line-by-line analysis of the poem West Indies, USA by Stewart. So there's no doubt that the length, form and structure of some poems can really be intimidating. Nevertheless, all it simply takes is a step-by-step interrogation of a poem's stanzas, poetic devices, themes, tones, moods, and of course, their individual effectiveness in order to grasp its meaning and message. So come along with me as I analyze this week's poem, and without further ado, let's begin by reading the poem. West Indies, USA by Stewart. Cruising at 30,000 feet above the endless green, the island seemed like dice tossed on a casino base. Some come up lucky, others not. Puerto Rico takes the pot, the Dallas of the West Indies. Silver linings on the clouds as we descend are hallmarked. San Juan glitters like a maverick's gold ring. All across the Caribbean, we'd collected terminals. Airports are like calling cards, cultural fingerprints. The handwritten signs at Port-au-Prince. Piaco's sleazy tourist act, the lethargic contempt of the baggage boys at Bed Bird in St. John's, and now for plush San Juan. But the pilot bland, "You're safe in my hands," drawl crackles as we land. U.S. regulations demand all passengers not disembarking at San Juan stay on the plane. I repeat, stay on the plane. Subtle Uncle Sam, afraid too many desperate blacks might re-enslave this island of the free, might jump the barbed electric fence around America's backyard and claim that vaunted sanctuary. Give me a pull. Through tough and tinted glass, the contrast tantalize. U.S. patrol cars glide across the shimmering tarmac. Containered baggage trucks unload with fierce efficiency. So soon we are climbing, low above the pulsing city streets. Galvanized shanties overseen by condominiums. Polished Cadillacs shimmering past rasters with push carts. And as we climb, San Juan's fool's glitter calls to mind the shattered innards of a TV set that's fallen off the back of a lorry. All painted valves and circuits, the road like twisted wires. The bright cars, microchips. It's sharp and jagged and dangerous and belonged to someone else. Before we analyze the poem stanza by stanza and line by line, it is important to comment on the title of the poem. It is always important to look at the title of the poem because it oftentimes gives us a hint about what the poem will be about, or to basically prepare us for the content in the poem, okay? So when we look at the poem, West Indies, USA, we are seeing the word West Indies being coupled with the word USA, right? So you will know that the West Indies and the USA, they're actually two different territories, okay? Two different parts of the world. But the way in which West Indies is coupled with the USA, it suggests that they are talking or they will be commenting on most of the West Indies, and notice that it is combined and coupled as if the West Indies is just one place, or maybe even not just maybe, but a country. And it's not the case that in this particular territory that is generally referred to or collectively referred to as the West Indies is consisted of so many different islands, okay? Also, we should also consider the fact that the word West Indies is separated by a comma, okay? In letter writing, when you're assisting students in the construction of the receiver's address or even the sender's address, I often tell my students that what comes first in this case is the capital of the country and then the country itself, okay? So in the case of St. Vincent, you will have Kingston, St. Vincent. Kingston is the capital, and you write comma, then St. Vincent after, to show that you're talking about one country. But when we look at this poem, which is called West Indies, USA, notice that the word West Indies seems to belong to USA. It's as if the person is saying that the West Indies is the capital of the USA, or the West Indies belongs to the USA, okay? This unearths memories of the transatlantic slave trade, where slaves were taken to the Caribbean to work as slaves for great powers such as the USA. Okay, let's begin with stanza 1. So stanza 1 says, cruising at 30,000 feet above the endless green, the islands seem like dice tossed on a casino base. Some come up lucky, others not. Puerto Rico takes the pot, the Dallas of the West Indies. Silver lining on the clouds as we descend are hallmarked. San Juan glitters like a maverick's gold ring. So let's go to line 1. Line 1 says, cruising at 30,000 feet above the endless green. The word cruising suggests that the person is at leisure, and the word above feet, or 30,000 feet above, suggests that the person is in the air. He or she is in a plane, and they're making observation at this point from the plane, okay? So the person is giving us what we call an aerial view of things below, right? And the word endless green there, when we think of something that's endless, it's countless, it's limitless, and it never finishes or seem to want to finish, right? So endless green there refers to the greenery of the Caribbean, the different trees. You know, the Caribbean is known for their green scenery, the large trees, right? So basically that's what the person is referring to as endless green, which is an example of visual imagery because it appeals to our sense of sight. We need our sense of sight to determine when something is green, right? So, and line 2 says, the islands seem like dice tossed on a casino base. The person then uses a metaphor to say that the islands are, he or she says that the islands seem like a dice, and not just dice, but the manner in which one will actually toss a dice on a casino base, okay? So dice are often used when persons are gambling, right? And a base is actually a rough woolen cloth with a nap on each side. It's usually felt like green covering that is used on pool boards or in casinos, right? That board or table that they will use for gambling. So they're saying that the islands look like these dice. Not that they are actually box-like, but the fact that if you were to have probably 4 dice in your hands and they were to be tossed on a casino base, the idea is that they will not come up in a straight line. Okay, they will be randomly placed on the casino, on the table, as a result of being tossed. So the idea that the person wants you to see or to visualize is the random arrangement of the Caribbean islands from his or her perspective, right? From that aerial view. They're not in a straight line. If you even want to look at a world map, I know sometimes these maps sometimes tend to exclude some countries, right? But if you were to find one that includes all of the Caribbean islands, you'll realize that they're not in a straight order. You might find some left, some right. In the case of Barbados, if you even want to look at the location of Barbados, St. Vincent, Barbados there to the north, and St. Vincent is a little, on the other side, eastward, right? So basically that's what the person wants to convey to us there. So the islands seem like dice tossed on a casino base. Some come up lucky, others not, okay? And notice the different connotation, the different words that are associated with gambling or casino or luck, okay? When you go to a gambling house or a casino, it's a game of chance. It's either you win or you lose. But the person says here in line 3 that some come up lucky. And that is expected when you go to places like that, others not. It's either some win, others won't win, or one or the other. Everybody wouldn't win, right? Because obviously they don't have enough money to pay everybody. However, amidst this game of chance or gambling, right, the person says that Puerto Rico, right? Puerto Rico is the country in this poem that represents the USA. Okay, so from time to time, you'll be hearing the person making social or socio-economic and socio-political comments on Puerto Rico, or to refer to the USA, right? And also on the West Indies as well. So in line 3, Puerto Rico takes a pot, right? Every time I read this line, what comes to mind is the leprechaun and his pot of gold. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, right? This short man, and he always had some gold hideaway somewhere. But the word pot there is short for a word called like the jackpot, which you usually hear in lottery, that somebody won the jackpot, okay? The jackpot, that is. So they're saying that it's not that Puerto Rico physically they actually were around a table gambling, everybody put in the bet and so on, and Puerto Rico actually walked away with money. But what the person wants to say is that among the different places that he or she traveled while he or she is cruising, that Puerto Rico came up as the winner. Okay, was revealed as the winner. But as we go along, we will see why the person thinks this way. The person actually describes Puerto Rico as the Dallas of the West Indies. Okay, now Dallas is actually a place in the U.S. Texas, and it's a very prosperous city, in the USA. So to say that Puerto Rico takes the pot, the Dallas of the West Indies, Dallas there is an example of an illusion, and it actually conveyed to us the promise of surprising good things from Puerto Rico's glamorous capital, right? So the person is in the air, and he or she is about to actually land in Puerto Rico, which you will see later on. And from what he or she is seeing from the sky, he thinks that yes, Puerto Rico takes the pot. They are the winners. Right away, I can see that they are the Dallas of the West Indies. They are the most prosperous among the different countries in the West Indies. So, okay, these are some of the personas and anticipations and some of the personal hopes as he or she lands, right? And notice that the person also adds that silver linings on the cloud as we descend. The word silver lining or the expression on the clouds reminds us of that saying, that metaphor that says that behind every dark cloud there's a silver lining, right? That comes to mind. This is an illusion, okay? So as the person actually descend into San Juan, it seems as though there are some silver lining there that reminds the persona that better things are in store for him or her as they land in San Juan. And so the person says that as we descend, here's our descension into San Juan are hallmarked. Okay, when we say that something is hallmarked, we are saying that it's marked with distinction. Okay, is marked which indicate purity and richness. Okay, something of good quality. So notice all the person is actually making these observations even without touching the country, just from above. Okay, and it reminds me sometimes of some persons who, even though sometimes they say do not judge the book by its cover, that is so true. And this is what's happening here with the person. He's not even in the country as yet, but right away he already said that Puerto Rico takes a pot. It's the best country we have visited, and I've heard it tells us that the person is actually acting on anticipation and even hearsay, because of course there are some things there, visual things, like for example maybe even the glamour and the glitter that he's seeing. He just assumed that yes, this is the best, all that I heard and believe in, and I can't wait to get there. You'll see later on that the person will certainly be disappointed. So the person says that as we descend, they are hallmarked. Everything that the person is seeing, he is expecting that yes, this is a place of quality. San Juan glitters like a maverick gold ring. Okay, so a maverick gold ring, it suggests that this particular gold ring, it's received with wealth, okay? Or it suggests that Puerto Rico actually received its wealth illegally. And it looks appealing, but when you get to know it, it is truly something that you should not trust. It's not authentic, right? So when the person uses the simile and says that someone glitters like a maverick gold ring, the word maverick suggests that like an outsider or somebody who attains things illegally. And even then, there should have been a warning to the persona that what you're seeing you shouldn't trust. Okay, seeing and believing appearance versus reality. But let's see what happens as we go to the other stanza and explore the poem stanza by stanza. But before I move on, I just want to bring to your attention the different poetic devices there on your left for your consideration. Okay, stanza 2 says, all across the Caribbean, we're collected terminals. So all across the Caribbean tells us that the persona was actually traveling to different Caribbean islands, and he or she was not traveling alone. We know this because the person said we had collected terminals. Terminals there, that's the airport. Okay, so they were able to collect, or they were able to have mental pictures of the airports. They were given the privilege to enter. Okay, while they move to change their plane, to move from island to island or country to country to get to their final destination. The person also adds that airports are like calling cards, right? Calling cards are those small business cards that you give to persons with your business name, your email address, and there's some persons who, because they want their business or they want to leave a good impression on the person, they tend to invest a lot in their calling cards where it will look they tend to do something that is of good quality, because some persons tend to say that you can look at somebody's business card or calling card and this and just come up with an impression of their business. Okay, so the person says that as we move from airport to airport, they tell us something about that country. Okay, they are actually acted as cultural fingerprints. A fingerprint is something that is unique. It is said that nobody has the same fingerprint. Okay, that's why when you are arrested by police and they figure that they need to charge you and so on, they tend to take your fingerprint. Okay, so they will be able to identify you in the future. But the person, by saying cultural fingerprint, the word fingerprint is actually something, a mark or a smear that is left behind by a dirty finger. Right? The person is suggesting that what he or she saw at these airports, they are very unbecoming. Okay, and it tells the persona a lot about their culture. Right? That's what the word finger mark, right? Even fingerprint tells us about how the person sees these countries. The person also commented and said the handwritten signs at Port-au-Prince. Right? Now, Port-au-Prince is actually the capital of Haiti. So the person is saying, you know what, we passed through the airport at Haiti and, you know, they could even afford to have something typed or something of quality. They actually had handwritten signs, right, in their airport. So the person is really implying that that country is poor, right? And by saying Piaco, sleazy tourist art. Piaco is the capital of Trinidad. So they're saying that the tourist art that they had there, it was sleazy, it wasn't well done. And even the word sleazy there can also mean that the persona really felt that the quality was really bad, it was really low, and it was trying to attract people by showing appearance or even in a false manner. Right? The person also said that there were lethargic contempt of baggage boys in Antigua. St. John there is the capital of Antigua, and he or she described the baggage boys as lethargic, saying that they're lazy, and contempt showing that, you know, it was even, they behaved scornful. So the person certainly wasn't pleased. The words such as handwriting and the sleazy and lethargic and contempt suggest that the person was not pleased with the cultural display, in his or her opinion, of the countries that he or she and their companions have traveled so far. Okay, after sharing with us all of these, the person says no for plush San Juan. Okay, plus there suggests that the person is hoping to see different things in the airports, different features in San Juan Airport that are richly luxurious and expensive, right? They are of high quality. And now for plush San Juan, even now for plush, the fact that the person is not even in San Juan as yet, but he or she is referring to it as plush, suggests that the person would have heard something about San Juan, would have heard something about Puerto Rico. It is said that Puerto Rico is a country that belongs to the USA. Okay, so even though it belongs to the USA, or it is a USA territory or Commonwealth, they cannot vote in the USA presidential election, nor do they have a representation in Congress. So they are not a part of America's 50 states, but they are not an independent country. So they're just there, you know, in between there. Okay, so because Puerto Rico is belongs to the USA, all the rumors you usually hear about America being, you know, filled with rich stuff and high quality, it is easy to see why the person would have bought in or believed these ideologies or comments about Puerto Rico, right? So remember, he's still in the air, he's not on the ground, he hasn't seen the airport, but he has already described San Juan itself as plush, something of luxury and high quality. Okay? And please pay attention to the different words here. I have diction. Remember, diction is a poetic device and not a figurative device. Okay, it can be used, but if you decide to use it, you have to give a definition of these words, give an example of how it is used in the poem, and then you comment on their effectiveness. Okay, so we are now at stanza 3, which says, but the pilot's bland, you're safe in my hands, drawl crackles as we land. The word but there tells us that the personal train of thought is about to change. Okay, the word but also warns us that the person will be disappointed, right? So the pilot speaks without feeling or enthusiasm. That's in the second line of stanza 3. but the pilot bland. When you bland it suggests that the person actually said something. In this case, is the pilot. He said the following without any enthusiasm or expression, okay? Any recognition of how the passengers on the plane will feel by his or her announcement. So stanza 3 says, but the pilot's bland. You're safe in my hands. Drawl crackles, okay? We were learning from the poem Test Matsuba in the Park that the word drawl there means accent, okay? Sometimes it's defined as the song or an accent that is very slow and dragging, okay? But generally it means accent. So the pilot said in his own accent, oh, you're safe in my hands, okay? So let's see why the pilot had to tell him that you're safe in my hands. But notice when he says, he announced that the passengers are safe in his or her hands, it is said that his drawl crackles, okay? As if his drawl actually, it wasn't said smoothly, or maybe it can be a case where because the pilot would have been making the announcement on the intercom, his voice actually dropped as a result of static from the airplane, right? But anyhow, the persona said, but the pilot's bland. You're safe in my hands. The persona says that the pilot said this particular line, you're safe in my hands, without enthusiasm as the plane was descending, okay? So besides saying that you are safe in my hands, notice that the persona also adds that this is what the pilot told them. U.S. regulations demand all passengers not disembarking on San Juan stay on the plane. I repeat, stay on the plane. Okay, so for some reason, remember the persona was anticipating landed in San Juan because he already heard that it was plush, it was luxurious. But notice that he was greatly disappointed by the pilot's announcement because they have a regulation. And notice that the pilot said it's U.S. regulations, it's not my regulations. These are the people's rule, right? And it demands that all passengers not disembarking at San Juan stay on the plane. And notice that the pilot repeated it as if, just in case you didn't hear it the first time, this is me saying it again. Stay on the plane. I repeat, stay on the plane. And after hearing that, the person had something to say. He or she said what? Subtle Uncle Sam, afraid too many desperate blacks might re-enslave this island of the free. Now, the word subtle, when something is said subtly, it is said that it's used making use of clever and indirect methods to achieve something. So the person is saying, you know, they don't want us in the country, so this is their clever way. This is their cunning way of keeping us out. So notice that he said Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is an example of what we call a metonym, right? It's the use of a something to represent something else that is similar to it. So if you will say the crown to refer to crown land, okay, because the crown means the queen and, you know, her family and so on, right? So in this case, Uncle Sam represents America. This person who is referred to Uncle Sam, they actually, even today I hear it, right? It is said that years ago, somebody by the name of Samuel Wilson actually sent some meat to the soldiers during one of the war in the 1800s, and somebody wrote the name Samuel Wilson on it, right? So when it was being transferred, it was changed to Uncle Sam, right? Sam being short for the word Samuel. So since then, the name Uncle Sam was always used to refer to America, right? It's also used to refer to America's, basically their federal government, okay, even to this point. So when the person says, subtle Uncle Sam, afraid too many desperate blacks, I wanted to pay attention to the person's tone because it changes from anticipation into what seemed to be bitter, okay? So notice that because the person wasn't allowed to leave the plane to actually see the airport, as he or she, not just he, as he or she got to see at the previous Caribbean islands, right? He or she becomes upset, right? Using words like subtle Uncle Sam afraid too many desperate blacks. There's nowhere in the poem telling us that the Puerto Rico or even the Americans actually refer to whoever's in the plane as desperate, okay? Because maybe this is even a regulation they had for everybody and not that particular plane, okay? This also tells me the importance of point of view, not just as it relates to literature, but point of view in real life, okay? Considering different sides, at least two sides before you actually make a decision about something, even before you believe something, okay? So right away, because if we don't consider things like this is a rule for everybody, because there could have been a plane with just, Caucasian people only inside of it, right? Would you also agree with the persona that Uncle Sam thinks that desperate blacks are in the plane, and they will want to re-enslave Puerto Rico, right? Puerto Rico, I must say, is located in the Caribbean geographically, right? Geographically, it's in the Caribbean, but it is a U.S. territory, okay? Just like we like countries like St. Vincent, we are Commonwealth countries, right? And we belong to the Commonwealth in the UK. So when the person says U.S. regulations demand all passengers not disembarking on San Juan stay on the plane, I repeat, stay on the plane, this got the persona upset. And you will see that the persona's attitude towards San Juan will change drastically. Right away, he already believed that America. So even though they're in Puerto Rico, the person will say a lot of things about America because Puerto Rico is American territory, okay? So subtle Uncle Sam, afraid too many desperate blacks might re-enslave this island of the free, okay? Now we know that the West Indies had a long history of slavery, and right away, this reminds the persona of slavery, okay? It reminds the persona of those great powers owning slaves or owning Caribbean territory. So right away, the easiest thing for the person to jump at is the fact that you all think that we will come and re-enslave it, which is ironic because it wasn't the West Indies that colonized or enslaved themselves. They were enslaved by these great powers, okay? However, the persona says, notice the use of the persona of the italics, okay? So when italics is used, it allows the word to stand out from the other words in the sentence, okay? So I there actually create what we call a pun. A pun is a literary device, which is the amusing use of words that have the same sound but different meaning, right? So when you hear I, like for example, like even Rasta talk, like I man and I, right? It shows or convey the idea of belonging. So basically it's even suggesting that you all are doing all these things to keep us out of the country, but really and truly it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to I, or it belongs to persons who are Jamaican or person or of the geographical Caribbean, okay? And the person says, might we enslave this island of the free, suggesting that really and truly, America is usually called, or it's usually referred to as the land of the free, where persons can go there and be anything, do anything. They will not be prosecuted, right? That is something that is well known about American. So when the person says that this island of the free, he's being a bit sarcastic. He or she is being a bit sarcastic. Because you are saying that this is the island of the free. You should allow persons to roam free, to see your airport for free, but really and truly you're not doing that. You're giving the pilots demands and regulations to read to us. So just let us know that we cannot come and touch your soil, we cannot see your airport, okay? And the person also says too, that one, Uncle Sam is afraid that there are too many desperate blacks, which is an example of racism, right? As if all black people, it suggests, are desperate to see an American territory, right? The person will really seem to be upset. He or she even said that not just that, they think we will re-enslave this island of the free. In fact, they think that we will jump the barb electric fence, okay? Now, it is said that around America's backyard, especially in places like the boundary there between America and Mexico, they have barbed wire fence, right? Well, persons always try to see if they can actually get over them in order to enter the country, illegally. Right, so the person is saying that this is one of the reasons why you all have these regulations to keep us out, basically. Okay, I also want to point out, as it relates to poetic devices, the use of what we call run-on lines. Okay, so because this is the third stanza, you will notice that the poem, the stanzas, they tend to begin there in the middle. Okay, right here, instead of in comparison to right here, where you know that sentences and so on usually begin. Right? Notice that is right there. This is what we call run-on lines, right? These lines are lines in which the meaning leads you to run swiftly into the end of the line below it in order to complete its sentence and meaning. But it also creates what we call visual imagery, which is a poetic device because it helps the reader to visualize, in this case, We had in the last line of stanza 3, the person says that they believe that visitors or desperate blacks might jump the above electric fence. Okay, it gives us the imagery of persons entering Puerto Rico or even America illegally. Okay, so that's why the use of run-on lines are effective in this poem. We also have an example of auditory imagery where the pilot speaks without feeling. The word bland there suggests that whatever he said was said without enthusiasm, any consideration to how the passengers took or felt by his or her announcement. Okay. Also the repetition there, I repeat, stay on the plane. Right. So the pilot's announcement resonated. That's the effectiveness or the purpose of the repetition. Right. It's for basically to get the message that was said to the persona, to help it to resonate, for them to understand or to really emphasize that you really need to comply to this regulation or you might get yourself in trouble. Okay. And also examples like re-enslave is an allusion to the transatlantic slave trade, which strengthens the persona's argument about America's hypocrisy and especially as it relates to freedom. Okay, because as you go on in the poem, we will be reminded about some of the expressions and things that America will see from time to time, being the land of the free, and the idea is you can travel there freely without any detour or any problems, which you realize in this poem that is certainly not the case. Okay. Okay, so we are now on to stanza 4, which says, which is a continuation from stanza 3, where the person says that Uncle Sam or America fears that desperate blacks will come and jump their barbed electric fence, to enter their backyard. Okay, so this is what we are continuing from stanza 3, which jumps into stanza 4 because of that run-on line. So it is said in stanza 4 that the America thinks that they will jump the electric fence around America's backyard. Okay, it's America's backyard because remember it's not a part of their 50 states, and Puerto Rico is not attached physically in North America. Okay, so it is seen as their backyard because it's just there behind them. Okay, so the electric fence, we know, I told you before, is that the barbed fence that is made out of barbed wire there to keep persons out. And the person says that besides that, they're afraid that they will re-enslave, they will actually take the country away, because the person is suggesting that because Puerto Rico is geographically located in the Caribbean, it should not be referred to on America to begin with, should not own Puerto Rico, right? So the person continues and says that, and claims that vaunted sanctuary. Okay, give me a pool. The word vaunted there means highly praised or widely praised or voted about or boasted about. Okay, and America is always seen as a sanctuary because when we think about a sanctuary is a place of refuge. Okay, it's a place of safety from persecution or even danger. Every time I hear the word sanctuary, besides considering churches, it always reminds me of that cartoon of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, when the lady who was there with him, she wanted help at one point and she went to the sanctuary and they couldn't come in and harm her, even though she was threatened and so on, still that way. But especially historically, persons will go to churches and they had this rule where you couldn't harm anybody in church as long as they are inside of the building. Okay, but vaunted sanctuary there is actually a metaphor for America. And since we're saying that the word vaunted means something that is highly praised or boast about, this is something that Americans do. They tend to boast about their development and things that they offer there or things that they have there. And it's a sanctuary because they advertise themselves as a sanctuary. In fact, when we consider the Statue of Liberty, there is a poem there mounted on its wall. And if we consider the end here, which says, and this is actually found, this poem, which is called The New Colossus, which was written by Emma Lazarus, is actually mounted inside of the statue on the Statue of Liberty, right? And it says there, if we were to read the latter part, it says, the air bridge harbor that twin cities frame, keep ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she, with silent lips, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Right? So it's something that Americans usually say that, if you are poor, you're huddled, you're persecuted, come to America, we will actually prepare a place for you. We will be your freedom. We will be your sanctuary. But notice that the person is actually using the words vaunted to talk about America, which is supposed to be the sanctuary. And by even saying, give me your paw, give me your paw is a part of this poem that is found on the Statue of Liberty, something that they usually say, give me your tithe, your poor, and your other masses. So it is vaunted and it is posted about because, one, you're saying you're a sanctuary. You're saying, give me your poor. It's something that you always go on saying, right, about America. But now that desperate blacks or poor people want to enter your country, you're ensuring that you have security. You're ensuring that you leave regulations and instructions with the pilots just to keep us out. So basically, when the person adds that, give me your paw, it's not that the person is only reminding America or even Puerto Rico on America's behalf that you actually have a saying where you say that, you actually, you're opened or you will always welcome the poor or the other masses. But this is the opposite of what you're saying. So this is basically said with sarcasm. Give me your poor. Right? The person is basically just repeating something that they usually say, but now that they have to practice it, they're doing the opposite. Okay? And notice the use of the quotation, the single quotation. Right? When a single quotation is used, usually if you are quoting a quotation inside of a quotation, the single will be inside to show that it is a part of the whole general quotation itself. So at the beginning of such a quotation, the two will be outside and the one that is inside, if you're quoting somebody from a quote, the one inside usually have a single quote. But sometimes when you see a single quote, right, in this case, and the inverted commas, sorry, one here, one, and one here in comparison to two here and two here, it suggests oftentimes that the person is saying that something is wrong with the statement or the person is being sarcastic, right? In this case, of course, the person is being sarcastic, okay? Because obviously he's upset and he realizes the hypocrisy with the American system. They're not doing what they promised to do, okay? So after saying that America or Puerto Rico probably think that black people will come and just claim the vaunted sanctuary, or black people will come from different parts of the Caribbean and reclaim Puerto Rico as a Caribbean country or territory, right? The person then says, through tough and tinted glass, the contrast tantalizes. The contrast here is basically what America say they are, or even what the person heard about America or even Puerto Rico, right? In comparison to what he or she is witnessing right here, right? And notice that it actually tantalizes the persona. He is intrigued by what he or she is intrigued by what he or she is witnessing there, okay? So the person says, notice the use of the alliteration, the T, which is alliterated there, the N, true, toughen, and tinted, right? It shows the person's attitude has become toughened, even biased and even colored by his or her annoyance, right? That annoyance by not being allowed to enter the airport, right? So in this case, we realize that the person is inside of the plane and he or she is actually looking through the glass. That's when the person says the glass, the tinted glass, right? Airports are sometimes tinted, sometimes they're not tinted. But in this case, the person's glass is tinted, but tinted there, physically, right? It can be that there's tint there. But the tinted glass can be the person's outlook or perception of San Juan changing. It has now become tinted by this experience, this unfavorable experience that the persona just encountered here in that plane while they're on the tarmac, San Juan's tarmac, okay? So it has been tinted because the persona has now become biased. He has an opinion about them, okay? So the persona tells us, he or she is looking out and they're observing what's happening. The persona says, U.S. patrol cars glide across the simmering tarmac. So notice that they were told that they cannot come out of the plane as long as they're not disembarking, they're not leaving. They have to remain on the plane, right? They won't have the opportunity as they did in Puerto Rico and Trinidad and Antigua to look around and make judgments about the people and culture. You have to remain there. So the person looks out the window and he or she notices that there are patrol cars just gliding around the tarmac as if we are criminals. So really and truly, you already told us to stay on the plane. Why is it that police are out there just driving all over the place? As if everybody who visits Puerto Rico, that they are criminals. There are reasons that patrol cars have to be out there just patrolling. Okay, now notice that these, keep in mind that this is the person's opinion, having been denied the opportunity to visit the airport. Okay, the person also observed that the container baggage trucks unload with fierce efficiency as if they had criminals on this plane. You know, they're criminals, we need to get them here, they can't stay here more than 5 minutes. 5 minutes is not in the poem, I'm just saying, right? So because we don't want anybody to come and, according to the persona, re-enslave this Puerto Rico and take it back as a Caribbean island, right? We have to move with swift efficiency. You have to pack the bag and unpack them quick, right? And the person said that they actually unloaded the bag so quick that so soon they were climbing. So soon they were in the air. They had no time, right? So on our right, we have some poetic devices. Also, there's a reference. They highlight the U.S. promise to take care of its people. So the reference is right here. Give me a poem. This is an example of reference, right? Because it's found in a poem that is mounted on the Statue of Liberty in America. And of course, the contrast is there. The contrast is the ideas of freedom and welcome of strangers versus the obsession with security to keep them out. They're saying one thing and it's certainly another thing, okay? So I noticed I didn't complete my comments here about the visual imagery, but the reader can visualize what is happening there as the person shares with us, right? By saying in the previous stanza, line 3, the last line says that they are afraid that persons will join the barbed electric fence around America. We can visualize, in this case, it's Puerto Rico, but we can visualize that the airport or the country is, around the country, you will find barbed wire there to keep persons out, as if persons are criminals or prisoners, okay, or to keep something in. It seems as though they are protectors of something that they figure that we want to steal. That's what that suggests, okay? And also there's some visual imagery here, the U.S. patrol car, right? We can see that the person is sharing because he or she is looking on, and you can see the patrol cars just gliding, just driving around and so on to make sure that security is in place and everything runs smoothly. And we can also visualize the container baggage trucks as they unload with fierce efficiency as they took the bags and so on off the plane quick. And the person says, soon we are climbing. We can see at soon, no later than even later, depends. We can imagine that the plane is back up in the sky. They had no time to leave the airport because number one, they were told they can't leave the airport. You know, they had little time to even, you know, look on and observe anything else. As soon as they finished patrolling and unloading the truck, the baggage truck, they were back in the sky ready to go again. So stanza 5 says, low above the pulsing city street, galvanized shanties overseen by condominiums, polished Cadillacs shimmying past rastas with pushcarts. And as we climb, San Juan's fool's glitter calls to mind the shattered innards of a TV set that's fallen off the back of a lorry. All painted valves and circuits, the roads like twisted wires, okay? So in the previous stanza, the end of stanza 1, we see that the persona's plane is up in the air, okay? No time. So soon they are in the plane again. So now that the persona is in the plane, he or she is still making observations, okay? The last time we saw the person in the sky, he or she was telling us about his or her anticipation of San Juan, where San Juan was described as plush, as, you know, a place that's filled with luxury and high quality, okay? The plane landed, and then now the plane is back in the air, and the person is saying low above the pulsing city street. Low above suggests that the plane is not too high up in the sky, right? But it's ascending. But while the plane is ascending and they are traveling to go to the next island or the next destination, there are some observations, right? The word pulsing suggests the pulsing city street. City suggests that they are in the capital. They're still above the capital of San Juan. And pulsing suggests that the capital is alive. You know, business places are open, people are moving about, you know, just like any normal country. It's bustling, right? This person is saying, you know, while the plane is low, there are some things I can see. I can still see. The person is still making observations because it seems like as the person travels through the Caribbean, notice that so far, and even to make things worse, you know, he or she didn't even get to see inside of San Juan. All of his conclusions about Haiti, Trinidad, and Antigua, they are very negative, okay? It suggests some immaturity on the part of the person, in my opinion. Okay, but let's see. The person adds in line 2 of stanza 5, galvanized shanty. So these are the things that the person is saying that he or she is seeing from the sky, right? Because remember, he came to San Juan or Puerto Rico with his anticipation, his prior knowledge about this particular place. Okay, so it's a case where, you know, the major theme is appearance versus reality. So the person says that he or she is seeing galvanized shanties. Okay, do you know what is a shanty? A shanty is a small, crudely built shack, right? Or a cabin or hut. It's a small hut built from pieces of wood in which poor people usually live. So the persona, he is now giving us a whole bunch of negative information about San Juan, right? He or she, that is. So he or she points out that there are galvanized shanties there and any big houses there, you know. So you no, there are big houses there, but in San Juan, you can find, or Puerto Rico, which is an American state, you can find galvanized shanties overseen by condominiums. Condominiums are, or a condominium is a building or a complex of buildings containing a number of individually owned apartments or houses. So they're saying, you know what, just like other Caribbean countries, everybody in Puerto Rico, San Juan, they're not rich, you know. They are shanties overseen by condominiums. The word overseen there can actually mean overlook, or it can mean that the condominiums are located like on the mountains, while the shanties and so on are to the bottom. Okay? And because overseen can actually mean neglect or overlooked, it seems as though the person is suggesting that this American state, this American territory, has been overlooked by the USA. Okay, I know some years ago there was a hurricane that passed through Puerto Rico that devastated most of the country, and there were some public figures who came out publicly and they made statements about America and their refusal or the speed in which they actually send aid for a country that is known to be an American territory. And it's only after these public figures came out and, you know, said what they said, because I remember there was a few movie stars and few singers, you know, after they asked, because they are well known, they came and they made their public announcement, and in America you saw aid coming from all over the place. So when I see the statement, galvanized shanties overseen, the word overseen, right? Overseen can also mean that the person, you can be like a supervisor, you know, you are in charge of. But it suggests that because the person is saying that he's seeing shanties, he or she, is as if that was not the expectation. It suggests that America is neglecting this territory that they're calling their own. Why y'all don't just give back the West Indies, their country, Puerto Rico, so we can take care of ourselves? That's what that implies. The person also adds that he or she saw polished Cadillacs shimmering past Rastas with push carts. So you know that Cadillacs it's a brand, okay? It's a brand, and it's usually referred to luxurious cars. So it's a large luxury cars manufactured by the Cadillac company. And the word shimmering means to shake or to quiver and even to tremble. So it's as if they're saying that persons with Cadillacs, because the car is luxurious, right? When they're driving past Rastas with push carts, you know, they're very mindful so they won't scrape their vehicle, or because they maybe think that they will be robbed or something, right? But the person is setting up a contrast, right? Before, we got an earlier contrast, irony, where the person says that the opposite of what is expected happened. So for the persona, we had about 2, where the person was expected to see luxury and high quality and so on, and even, you know, a certain treatment in Puerto Rico, but that didn't happen. The opposite happened, where he or she had to remain in the plane, right? We're also seeing here another contrast where the persona is telling us that really and truly, what is expected in American country, because they are known to be prosperous and so on, that is not the case, okay? Here in Puerto Rico, you will find shanties owned by Rastas, you will find condominiums, you will find Cadillacs, but you will still find Rastas pushing about with push carts, okay? So push carts are usually small handcraft or barrows used by hand, okay? And especially in the Caribbean, it's not just Rastas that own them, but I guess the case is a case where, you know, you tend to see persons walking with themselves using a certain kind of cart that is moved about by hand to transport load or to do business. It usually suggests that the person is usually poor. So basically that's what the person is highlighting here, that poor people live here. It's not just condominiums and Cadillacs and so on, as I was probably hearing before, right? The person also says that as we climb, because the plane is going up and up, San Juan's fool's glitter calls to mind the shattered innards of a TV set. So the person, by saying San Juan's fool's glitter, so those of you, including the persona, that's the irony, because you were fool to begin with. Because in the beginning in stanza 1, you said no for plush San Juan. You already went and gave all these negative evaluation about the different airports. Even before you saw San Juan, he even said that as we descend, silver linings on the cloud. That allusion which says that at the end of every, well, it alluded to the statement, at the end of every dark cloud, there's a silver lining. He or she had all these anticipation about San Juan. So when the person says San Juan's fool's glitter in line 1, 2, 3, 4, the person is implying that those of you who believe the glitter, all that glitter isn't gold. You know that saying? All that glitter isn't gold. So San Juan's fool's glitter, if you believed it, you are a fool. But it calls to mind, or it reminds the persona of a shattered innard of a TV set. So the shattered innard of a TV set is the back of a TV, right? Or the inside of a TV. But it's shattered because the person is saying that it reminds the person of the shattered innards or the shattered inside of a TV set when it is falling off the back of a lorry. Lorry is actually a British word for truck, right? A truck. So sometimes it tells us a lot about the theme of parents versus reality, okay? So sometimes if you look at a TV is functioning, it's online, it's working, you are seeing pretty pictures, whatever, be it a cartoon or movie, whatever you're looking, you see pictures and you tend to see, it tends to be like a bit of a fairy tale, everything is all nice, but when you look inside of a TV, it is always not, or maybe it's a case where the wires and so on is really not pretty. Especially since the person likened this example, or likened what he or she saw in San Juan to a shattered inner, the shattered inside, it suggests that there are confusion, okay? And this is an example of a metaphor. So by using this metaphor, the person compares the view of the city, right? And in the view of the city, that's where the person says that above the pulsing city street. So the view, they show shanties, condominium, Cadillacs, pushcarts, and so on. The person compares the view of the city with his or her memory of a smashed TV set as it falls from a truck, okay? So the person says what? All the painted valves, all these are examples of metaphors. The painted valves they look like buildings from the top, right? And the sockets there, and the wires, they are all the city roads. They remind the persona of the city roads. And notice that it said that all painted valves and sockets. And it said that the roads like twisted wire. Notice that the wires are the city roads. And twisted suggests that, there are confusion there. Okay? And we will discuss all of these as we discuss stanza 5. And pay attention to the diction here. Remember to give the definition, give an example of how they were used in the poem, and you comment on the effectiveness. Right, which I did as I analyzed the poem line by line. So in stanza 6, we have another example of run-on line where we have to study the line above in order to complete the stanza's idea, okay, or sense. So stanza 6, we just have 2 lines. It goes on to say that the bright cars that you will find in San Juan and even in microchips, which suggests that, it appears it can be seen as a developed country. All these bright, luxurious things that you're seeing there in San Juan, the person concludes that it's sharp, and by it's sharp. So they're talking not just about the cars, but San Juan itself, right? It's sharp, jagged, dangerous, and belong to someone else, okay? So the word sharp, when something is sharp, an object, it says that it has an edge point that is able to cut or pierce something. And jagged suggests that it has a sharp, uneven edge or surface, and something that's dangerous is able or likely to cause harm or injury. So this is that last line is the persona's conclusion about San Juan. It is quite harsh, right? But it reminds me of a child. When you take a sweetie or something from a child that the child wants, the child will start to kick up and so on. I get that impression about the person. I'm not sure about you. Okay, having been denied the opportunity to enter the airport, the person just changed mode just like that. making conclusions about the person's wealth, or not the person's, but the country's wealth, the country's socioeconomic and political issues, just by looking at things about them from the sky. Okay, so there are examples of visual imagery there, the bright cars, right? These are also the microchips. They are likened to San Juan's bright cars. And we have the metaphor is still ongoing there, right? The addiction, sharp, jagged, and dangerous. I'm saying the use of all of this, the person is really establishing that really and truly this is a dangerous place. They will hurt you, they will cut you, right? And all of this the person came up with just because he or she was told that you have to remain on the plane. Okay, so let's discuss the poem's themes, tones, and moods before we end. So these are the themes I've come up with. If you can think about any more, feel free to share them in the comment section below. The major theme in this poem is appearance versus reality, how things appear and how they really are when you encounter them. Okay, so for the persona, the appearance of San Juan, even from the sky before he or she was denied entry, that's the appearance, but he or she saw the reality in his or her opinion of San Juan being dangerous and jagged. Right, of San Juan having push carts and shanties, right? It's not a case that everything there is luxurious, okay? And of course, reality could be the case where America always boasts that you should give me your poor, your huddled masses, you're welcome here, you're prosecuted, you're free to come here. But when we do touch down, or when we enter your airport, the fierce efficiency you actually install in order to get us out, it's very heart-wrenching. That's what the person is saying. So the person saw it as an irony, right? But from my perspective, it's a case where efficiency is always a good thing in any business at all. Okay, when you are efficient and you have things just working on the clock, things run smoothly. So maybe that's the way in which they do things. They are not thinking that persons will be in the plane thinking all these negative thoughts about them or their country, because they decide, it doesn't make any sense allowing everybody to come off the plane and wait for their next flight when we could just remove the bags of persons coming off and let the others wait and just remove them quickly, and then they just get them on their way. The person is not thinking like that. Just by hearing you cannot do something, the person starts to become negative. He has nothing nice to say about Puerto Rico or America. I want you to keep that in mind, because it's often easy for persons when they are analyzing this poem to say that, oh gosh, they shouldn't have treated the visitor like that, but it's a case where God knows what was really happening in that particular day, or why is it they were because there's nothing to say that the authorities at the airport in San Juan actually had a problem. They didn't have an opportunity to explain themselves as well. Okay, that's another way of looking at the poem. Of course, another theme is people and desires. We saw the desire of the persona to, see San Juan. He or she had anticipated visiting, the airport, so we can look as he or she can look as he or she did in the other airports and look at their culture and, make a conclusion. But we saw that the person was really disappointed when he heard that as long as this is not a final destination, you cannot leave the plane. There are conflicts and complications there. We saw what happened, the internal conflict with the persona and the San Juan authorities, right? And places. We saw the persona commented on the different places that the group visited. Comments were made about Trinidad, Haiti, and Antigua, right? And of course, the persona, the examples of oppression, where the persona feels that probably the visitors are being oppressed. They are not given the freedom that should be extended to them as boasted by America, and that should be boasted by their Commonwealth or their territory, right? They feel as if they are treated as slaves, right? They feel as if they were not given what should have been bestowed to them, which is the opportunity to see the airport. And of course, culture, an example of culture there. Culture is seen by, maybe it's the practice of the airport, the San Juan's airport, to do things in an efficient way, right? Maybe that's their habit, right? And for the persona, maybe it's the persona's culture. But I wouldn't say that that's a culture, but maybe it's the habit of when you are traveling or you're in transit into a country, it's expected for you to allow persons to come out of the plane and, see the place before they board to go on their final destination. Of course, there are elements of discrimination because the persona feels that by saying that startled Uncle Sam afraid too many desperate blacks, it suggests that the persona is of African descent, right? So because I am black, this is why you're treating me like this. It's because black people are in the plane that we're not given the opportunity to even touch this so-called American soil. We have to remain inside where they do their business outside, and then they just send us off very quickly. Okay, so in the poem West Indies, USA, there's more than one tones in the poem. When we talk about tone in poetry or literature, we are referring to the persona's attitude towards the subject. So in this case, it's the persona's attitude towards San Juan and towards the authorities, towards basically his or her experience, right? While on the tarmac, while being denied the opportunity to enter the airport, okay? So for me, I saw examples of excitement when the person says, he saw San Juan as the Dallas of the West Indies. He even saw it as silver lining, in the cloud. And when we talk about the cloud, or every dark cloud, that expression, in every dark cloud there's a silver lining, right? When you talk about clouds seem to be something negative or gloomy, right? But by saying silver linings in the cloud, it suggests that the person anticipated good things. And even saying no for plush San Juan, he or she was really excited to visit there, okay? And there were anticipation, whether because the person would have heard this particular thing about San Juan, and it suggests that he or she heard it because even before seeing it, he or she said no for plush San Juan. I find the person was judgmental about the different Caribbean countries, the airports of the different Caribbean countries, where he or she already concluded quickly that the handwritten signs at Port of Spain suggesting that they are not professional or they are poor, they can't afford something of quality to display on the airport, by calling the tourist art, by describing it as sleazy, suggests that the art that they had there in Trinidad, it was vulgar. So he's basically saying that, their culture is a vulgar culture. He said when he or she said when they went to Antigua that the scornful and disrespectful baggage boys suggest that the people there are also the same, right? Scornful and disrespectful. So I find that the person was judgmental a lot, and we saw that when the person, having been refused entry into the airport, San Juan, he quickly made comments about calling San Juan's fool's glitter, right? The person was cynical. When somebody is cynical, that person believes that people are purely motivated by self-interest. Okay, so there are times that I feel it's just because the person his interest was not met or was not attended to, right? He just changed his thoughts, right? We heard a completely different impression of San Juan, where basically he left, right, toughened and tinted. He left with a biased opinion, a negative one of San Juan, just because his interest was not solved, it was not attended to, right? The person, of course, he was annoyed when the pilot said that U.S. regulation demanded passengers cannot disembark, that they had to stay there. He was so annoyed. He said, "Subtle Uncle Sam, afraid too many desperate blacks." And, he was really annoyed, he or she, because he or she wanted to come off of the plane. And, of course, he was shocked. He or she was shocked by what was seen while the plane was ascending. The different, the shanties versus the condominiums, polished Cadillacs versus the Rasta push carts, and so on. Okay? And of course, the person was, sarcastic, even with the expression, that allusion to, not allusion, but reference of that poem that is mounted on the Statue of Liberty, "Give me a poo." Okay? Wasn't a case that he was just merely repeating it. He was satirizing them. He was saying, really and truly, you all are saying, "Give me a poor," but when poor people, black people come to San Juan, you're not extending to them that privilege or that freedom you so boast about. Okay? So if you feel you can identify any more tones, go right ahead and share it in the comment section. So when we talk about moods in literature or in writing, right, or even studying a piece of writing, moods refers to the way in which the words make you feel as a result of studying them, reading them, hearing them, okay? So there were some feelings of anticipation as the persona uses words such as "no" for plush San Juan, and even by describing San Juan as the Dallas of the West Indies, because we know that Dallas is a place in Texas which is actually a prosperous city, right, in America overall. And by even saying that San Juan glitters like a maverick gold ring, all these words gives you anticipation. You want to see what the persona is about to see, and to see this place that suggests luxury and high quality. There were feelings of disappointment on the persona's behavior, right? And because we know that the persona would have traveled to the different airports, to different Caribbean countries, and had his or her evaluation about their culture just by looking at what he or she saw in the airport, right? Where there's a piece of art, the baggage boys, some sign because it's handwritten. The person concluded that they were sleazy, they were poor, they were rude just by looking at a sign, right? Mainly where disappointment is concerned, the fact that because the persona was not given the opportunity to visit the people in the airport, he or she wasn't able to leave the plane, he behaved like a child, when you would have taken away their sweetie or something that they want to play with or something in their possession. Right away, we saw a change in the persona's attitude from anticipation to what resembles bitterness. Just because he or she was not given the opportunity to visit the airport. Who knows what policy the Puerto Rico has as it relates to airport service. We don't know exactly what transpired that day, right? To just understand why is it that they have decided to, run their airport or the country in which they do. Right? Nothing is wrong, especially if they would have decided that if you're not disembarking at San Juan, to just stay on the plane. So they just remove the bags of posts. And sometimes it doesn't make any sense, especially if you're in transit and come off the plane and have to go inside sitting and listening for your flight number to prepare again. It makes sense sometimes that you just remain in the plane. But because the persona's feelings or interests were not served, he or she became very bitter. And there was some disappointment there. I felt some pity for the persona, to the extent that he seemed as though he really went to the dirt, he went to the ground as it relates to just giving an evaluation of the country, which is mainly because he or she would have become biased, he or she has been hurt, having even heard the pilot saying that US regulations said that you cannot leave the plane. He started kicking up. All of a sudden, he or she, that is, all of a sudden, the person started to highlight all the negatives about the country. I really have to pity the person, because it's a case where it seems as though it's either you don't know any better, but it's just a shameful way for you to actually just put out there to post, because I can imagine that such a person will be taking this particular opinion of San Juan wherever he or she goes, in whatever conversations, it will be said, it will be shared. Okay, so if you can think about any more, just share it in the comment section below and we will discuss it. Here's a summary of the poem. The persona gives an aerial view of San Juan, which is anticipated to be the wealthiest Caribbean country. The persona contrasts San Juan's anticipated luxury with the poverty, crudeness, and callousness in other Caribbean airports. However, owing to US regulations, the pilot orders all passengers to remain on the plane if San Juan is not their final destination, which offends the persona. As a result, the presence of armed forces, the efficiency of baggage truck, and the contrast between San Juan's poor and rich people cause the persona to conclude that San Juan is pretentious, dangerous, and controlled by outsiders. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and also see my other videos, which should be on the screen any moment now. So until then, take care.